My name is Sophia. For as long as I can remember, my younger sister Olivia was the undisputed favorite child in our family. She was breathtakingly beautiful, effortlessly confident, and somehow always managed to get every single thing she ever wanted. I, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. I was the quiet one, the invisible one, the sister who faded into the background, the one nobody ever truly noticed. So, when Olivia proudly announced she was marrying Ethan Blackwood, a powerful young billionaire from one of America's wealthiest and most elite families, everyone was absolutely ecstatic. The entire world celebrated. The upcoming wedding was instantly labeled as the event of the year. The guest list was a glittering sea of celebrities, high-profile politicians, and influential business leaders. Everyone who mattered was invited. Everyone except me. Then, just 3 days before the grand wedding, Olivia called me. Her voice on the phone was ice cold, stripped of any warmth. "Emily, don't come," she said flatly. At first, I froze. I genuinely thought she was playing a cruel joke. But then, she continued, piercing me with her words. "You're embarrassing, Emily. You just don't fit into our world." In that exact moment, I felt like my heart had completely stopped beating. The pain was suffocating. "Olivia, please." "I'm your sister," I whispered, fighting back tears. "I've made my decision," she replied sharply, before hanging up the phone and leaving me in total silence. I cried all night long, drowning in a wave of betrayal. But the deepest heartbreak didn't even come from Olivia. It came from our parents. They didn't stand up for me. They didn't defend me. Not even once. In fact, the deepest sting came when my own mother looked at me and coldly said that maybe Olivia was right after all. So, on the fateful day of the wedding, I stayed behind at home, entirely alone. I turned off my phone, desperate to shut out the noise of a world that didn't want me, and tried my best to forget everything. But then, something completely unbelievable happened. Barely 3 hours into the lavish ceremony, a sudden, heavy knock echoed at my front door. I pulled it open and instantly froze in absolute shock. Outside my house stood 2 massive, sleek black SUVs, surrounded by several imposing security guards. Standing right in front of them was a sharp-dressed man wearing an incredibly expensive suit. "Emily Parker?" he asked, his voice formal and serious. "Yes," I stammered, completely bewildered. "Mr. Ethan Blackwood requests your presence immediately." At first, I honestly thought it was some kind of cruel, elaborate joke. But the look on his face told me it wasn't. Within minutes, I was ushered into the back of the luxury vehicle and was being driven at high speed toward the ultra-exclusive resort where the grand wedding was taking place. When I finally arrived and stepped into the venue, a collective gasp seemed to ripple through the crowd. Hundreds of wealthy guests turned around, staring directly at me. The entire ceremony had ground to a complete halt. Olivia stood at the altar, her face contorting with pure rage. "What is SG doing here?" she shouted, her voice echoing through the venue. Before anyone could even attempt to answer her, Ethan himself calmly stepped forward. Then he spoke words that absolutely nobody in that room ever expected to hear. "I've been waiting for Emily." The entire room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Olivia looked utterly confused, her confidence suddenly fracturing. "So, invite her to sit down then," she snapped, trying to regain control of the situation. But Ethan slowly shook his head, his eyes fixed on me.
"No."
Then, he turned away from his bride and walked straight toward me. Looking into my eyes, he said, "Emily, 6 months ago, You completely changed my life." Standing there, I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. My mind raced, searching for any connection. And then, like a flash of lightning, I suddenly remembered. 6 months earlier, during a blinding, terrible snowstorm, I had pulled over on the side of a freezing highway to help a desperate stranger whose car was hopelessly stuck in the deep snow. I vividly remembered it now. On that freezing night, I had willingly given him my own warm coat to shield him from the biting cold. I bought him a hot coffee from a nearby gas station, and I stayed by his side for hours until roadside help finally arrived. I never even asked for his name. To me, he was just someone in need. That completely helpless stranger was Ethan Blackwood. Looking at me now in front of everyone, he smiled softly. "Everyone around me always wanted my money," he said, his voice echoing through the grand hall. "But you were the very first person who treated me like a real human being." The hundreds of wealthy guests were completely speechless. Olivia's arrogant smile vanished, and her face turned deathly pale. Then, Ethan revealed the shocking truth to the entire room. He had spent the last several months secretly learning about both of us behind the scenes. He discovered that while Olivia spent her days chasing shallow fame and mindless luxury, I had spent my weekends helping elderly neighbors, volunteering at local shelters, and working 2 exhausting jobs just to support struggling families in need. Ethan turned his head and looked directly into Olivia's eyes. "The woman I thought I was marrying doesn't exist," he said coldly. The entire room instantly exploded with frantic whispers and murmurs. Realizing her perfect life was shattering, Olivia started screaming, losing all control. But Ethan wasn't finished yet. With absolute calm, he pulled a formal legal document right from his pocket. "The wedding is officially canceled." Loud gasps echoed through the massive hall. Overwhelmed by shock and public humiliation, Olivia nearly collapsed right there on the altar. Then, completely ignoring the chaos behind him, Ethan walked over to me. He looked at me with genuine warmth and said, "I don't know exactly what the future holds for us, but you are, without a doubt, the kindest person I have ever met." For the very first time in my entire life, every single person in that crowded room was looking at me, not at Olivia. They were looking at me. 1 year later, I wasn't living in a glamorous mansion, and I wasn't a famous celebrity. But for the first time, I was truly deeply happy. Over the past 12 months, Ethan and I had become incredibly close friends. Eventually, naturally, that deep friendship blossomed into a beautiful love. As for my sister Olivia, many of her so-called friends completely disappeared the exact moment the billionaire lifestyle and money disappeared. Stranded in the reality of her own making, she finally learned a harsh lesson that she should have known all along. Beauty gets attention. Money gets followers. But true kindness earns respect. And respect lasts forever.